His wife promised it would be just one night, just a harmless fling with her so-called dream man. But when she walked out, she never expected what her husband would do next, and when she found out, she screamed. Welcome to Amelia's Stories. These true-life tales of love, trust, and betrayal will keep you hooked till the end. If you're new here, let us know where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Johnson was the kind of man many women wished they had. In his late 30s, living in Texas, he worked hard every single day, making sure his wife Alyssa had everything she needed. Their home was comfortable, their life stable, and their marriage, at least from the outside, looked like a dream. Alyssa, though, was different. In her early 30s, she was strikingly beautiful and full of ambition. People often said the two of them were a perfect match, and Johnson believed it. He adored her, never hesitating to put her first, whether it was surprising her with small gifts or planning weekend getaways. To him, she was his world. But Alyssa's heart was restless. The steady life that Johnson provided felt too calm for her. She wanted excitement, something more than routines and quiet nights at home. She smiled in public, but when she spoke to her closest friend, the truth slipped out. She admitted she sometimes felt like she was missing out on her dream man. That secret thought would soon destroy everything. One evening, Johnson came home tired from work, expecting nothing more than a quiet dinner with his wife. But Alyssa's face was serious, her eyes avoiding his. She asked him to sit down because there was something she needed to say. Johnson felt his chest tighten before she even spoke. With a calmness that didn't match her words, Alyssa told him she needed just one night with someone else. She said it wouldn't mean anything, just a fling with a man she once knew back in college. Someone she called her dream man. She tried to explain it as if it were harmless, a small thing she had to get out of her system. Johnson stared at her in disbelief. His heart pounded, his stomach twisted. The woman he loved, the one he had promised forever to, was asking for permission to betray him. He shook his head, begging her not to go through with it, pleading that they could work through whatever she felt was missing. But Alyssa leaned closer, her tone almost sweet, twisting the knife deeper. If you really love me, you'll let me do this, she whispered, as though it were some test of devotion. Johnson felt trapped, torn between his pride and his desperate love for her. Against every instinct screaming inside him, he gave a quiet, broken nod. He told himself it would be just one night, that she would come back to him. But deep down he already knew something had shattered. That night, Alyssa dressed carefully, her perfume heavy in the air as she left the house with a smile Johnson hadn't seen in months. She was meeting Derek, the man she once admired back in her college days, the one she now called her dream man. Johnson stayed behind, sitting alone in the quiet house. Every tick of the clock cut through him like a blade. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, his mind filling with images he wished he could erase. The woman he loved more than anything was in another man's arms, and he was powerless to stop it. When morning came, Alyssa returned. She walked in lightly, almost glowing, as if nothing terrible had happened. Johnson, exhausted from a sleepless night, searched her face for answers. But she gave him little more than a cold shrug, saying it was over now. It was just one night, she insisted, her voice oddly cheerful, as though she had accomplished something. Nothing more, nothing less. Johnson tried to believe her. He wanted to trust her words, wanted to hold on to the hope that this nightmare would end there. He told himself to forgive, to move on, to pretend the crack in his heart wasn't widening. But deep inside something shifted. The man who had once felt secure in his marriage now felt the ground slipping beneath him. Her promise meant nothing, and though he tried to hide it, Johnson's soul was beginning to break. Only a few days had passed since Alyssa swore it was just one night, but Johnson felt the change immediately. She was glued to her phone, smiling at messages she tried to hide. At night, when he rolled over to hold her, she was already awake, typing in the glow of the screen. Soon she started leaving for errands that stretched late into the evening, returning with excuses that never sounded right. Johnson's patience finally snapped. One night, as she slipped on her shoes, he asked her directly, his voice tight with pain, "Are you still seeing him?" Alyssa froze for only a moment before her face hardened. She didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she looked him straight in the eye and said the words that shattered him completely. "Yes. I don't want to stop. Derek makes me feel alive, something you never could." The air left Johnson's lungs. Years of devotion, sacrifices, and love were dismissed in one cruel sentence. He had given her his best, and she had tossed it aside as if it meant nothing. Without hesitation, Alyssa grabbed a bag from the closet, throwing clothes into it carelessly. "I deserve this," she snapped when Johnson tried to speak. "I deserve to be with him." Johnson stood frozen, his heart breaking as she walked out the door. The life they had built together crumbled in an instant, leaving him in the silence of a home that no longer felt like home. The days after Alyssa left were the darkest Johnson had ever known. The house, once filled with her voice and laughter, now echoed with silence. Nights stretched endlessly as he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over. Food lost its taste. Often he went without eating at all. Every corner of the house reminded him of her absence, each memory cutting deeper than the last. His friends, worried about him, urged him to end it quickly. File for divorce, Johnson. Don't let her drag you down, they said. But Johnson barely responded. He wasn't ready to move in anger. He needed to think. Slowly, through the fog of heartbreak, a plan began to form. Instead of drowning in rage or chasing after her, Johnson turned inward. He pulled out financial records, bank statements, even phone bills. Every late-night message, every receipt that hinted at her secret meetings, he saved them all. It wasn't about revenge just yet. It was about control. He realized Alyssa wanted freedom, wanted a new life with Derek. Fine. He could have it. But she wouldn't take everything he worked for. For the first time in weeks, Johnson felt a spark of clarity. The pain was still there, sharp and heavy, but beneath it was something new, a steady resolve. If Alyssa thought she was walking away on her terms, she was wrong. Johnson would make sure this ending was written by him. When Johnson finally walked into the lawyer's office, he carried himself with a calm that surprised even him. The papers were prepared, neat and final. There was no anger in his voice, no pleading in his eyes. He signed them with steady hands and sent them on their way. Alyssa, on the other hand, didn't see it coming. She had expected shouting, tears, or at least an attempt to win her back. Instead, Johnson's silence cut deeper than any argument could. When the papers arrived, her shock was clear. This wasn't the man she thought she could control. Court was the moment of truth. Johnson, quiet and composed, laid out the evidence he had been gathering, messages, receipts, and records that painted a clear picture of her betrayal. The judge listened, and sympathy tilted in Johnson's favor. When the decision was made, Alyssa's world shifted. She lost her claim on the house she once decorated, the car she loved driving, and even the joint savings she believed she could rely on. Everything she thought she would take with her slipped from her hands in that courtroom. At first, Derek tried to reassure her, but soon reality set in. The financial strain, the drama, the constant tension. It wasn't what he had signed up for. Slowly, he began pulling away, no longer seeing Alyssa as the dream woman she once seemed. Meanwhile, Johnson walked out of court taller, carrying not just freedom in his hands but quiet victory in his heart. Alyssa thought moving in with Derek would be the beginning of her dream life. At first, everything felt exciting. Late nights out, long conversations, and the rush of being with someone new. But that sparkle didn't last. Soon, Derek started noticing the side of Alyssa she had hidden. The constant demands, the need for attention, and the way she spoke of the past as if she regretted nothing. Arguments replaced laughter. Derek grew restless, realizing Alyssa wasn't the fantasy he had built up in his mind. She was no longer the carefree college memory. She was a woman carrying baggage, drama, and financial problems. The thrill faded quickly, and patience was not one of Derek's strengths. While Alyssa's new life crumbled, Johnson was on a different path. He started therapy, facing the pain instead of hiding it. He joined the gym, pushing himself through every workout, slowly regaining strength. Old friends he hadn't seen in years reached out, and he welcomed them back into his life. Piece by piece he was rebuilding, not just his routine but himself. It was during this time that Alyssa's calls began. At first she sounded casual, asking if they could talk. But as the days passed, her tone grew softer, almost desperate. She hoped for comfort, for familiarity, maybe even for forgiveness. Johnson saw her number light up his phone more than once, but he never answered. For the first time in years, his focus was not on her. It was on his own peace. It didn't take long before Derek finally had enough. The late-night fights, the money problems, and Alyssa's constant need for reassurance wore him down. One evening, without much warning, he told her it was over. There was no softness in his tone, no hesitation. He simply walked away, leaving her with nothing. No partner, no stability, and no plan. Suddenly, Alyssa's world crashed around her. She had traded her marriage for a dream that turned out to be nothing but smoke. With Derek gone, she was left broke, alone, and humiliated. The people who once admired her now whispered behind her back, and the life she thought she deserved had slipped from her hands. Desperate, Alyssa found herself standing at the door of the house she once shared with Johnson. Tears streaked down her face as she knocked, her voice trembling when he opened the door. "I made a mistake," she sobbed. "It was supposed to be just one night. I never meant to lose us." Johnson stood still, his expression unreadable. He didn't yell, didn't comfort, didn't show any of the emotions she hoped for. He simply listened in silence. And in that silence, Alyssa felt something she never had before, power slipping away. For the first time she realized Johnson wasn't the man she could sway with tears and promises anymore. He was no longer under her control. That truth alone cut her deeper than Derek's rejection ever could. Johnson stood in the doorway, his arms crossed, watching Alyssa crumble in front of him. Her tears fell heavy, her voice cracking as she begged him to let her back in. But his eyes stayed steady, calm in a way that unsettled her. "You know what you taught me?" Johnson finally said, his tone measured. "Never give someone the power to destroy you. I gave you everything and you threw it back in my face." Alyssa shook her head wildly, reaching for him as if words could fix what she had broken. "No, you can't just end us like this. We have years together. You can't throw all of that away." Her voice rose into a scream, desperation dripping from every syllable. Johnson didn't flinch. His strength was no longer hidden beneath heartbreak. He looked her straight in the eyes and spoke with a firmness that left no room for doubt. "You threw it away the moment you left. The moment you chose him over me, you killed this marriage." His words landed harder than any anger ever could. Alyssa's sobs turned into sharp cries, her body trembling as reality sank in. She realized she no longer had any power, no way to twist him back into the man who once begged for her love. Humiliated and defeated, she stormed away, slamming the door behind her. And as she walked off, she knew his rejection cut deeper than anything Derek had ever done to her. Johnson's life slowly shifted into something new, something lighter. No longer burdened by betrayal, he began to embrace single life with a strength he never knew he had. His mornings were filled with gym sessions, his evenings with laughter from old friends, and his heart carried peace instead of pain. He learned to enjoy the quiet, to breathe freely without waiting for the next heartbreak. In time he opened himself to dating again. But this time he carried wisdom. He no longer chased approval or begged for affection. He set boundaries, firm and clear, and he never tolerated disrespect. Women noticed his calm confidence, the strength that came from surviving betrayal and rebuilding himself from the ground up. Meanwhile, Alyssa's world unraveled. Without Johnson's steady presence, she drifted between small apartments, unstable jobs, and shallow relationships that never lasted. Each man she met reminded her of what she had lost. The loyalty, the love, the stability she once took for granted. Regret clung to her like a shadow she couldn't escape. One evening, as Johnson drove through town with the windows down, a soft smile on his face, Alyssa happened to see him from afar. She froze, watching the man she once thought weak now carry himself with unshakable strength. Her chest ached with the truth. She had thrown away the best thing in her life. The man she believed she could control was the one who ended up holding the power all along.